There has been one particular popular character from the series I haven't been giving enough attention to. A perhaps stupid decision on my part, if I want to appeal to the widest audience possible in this already niche franchise. And as much as I'd wish it was Giga Chad Biagio himself, it is, in fact, the railgun, Misaka Mikoto. But damn, this character is literally everywhere. And I'm not just talking about her screen time across the Toaru franchise as a whole, but also in marketing the franchise. Even when it comes to a certain magical index specifically, where Misaka isn't even the main or title character, she tends to be the face of the franchise. The reason for this is that she is by far the most popular character in the series, with Accelerator as perhaps the closest character to challenging her. I want to talk about how Misaka's role in Index evolved over time, as she was introduced and became the face of Toaru, and to analyse her character in both Index and in a spin-off manga and anime, A Certain Scientific Railgun. Misaka's role in Index is quite different to Railgun, and there is really a lot to talk about for both. So that's why I want to split this video into two parts. In this part, I will talk about her role in Index, as that is where she made her debut, and is the main story of the franchise. Then in part 2, I will talk about Misaka's character in Railgun. So, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe so you don't miss out on seeing part 2 when I upload it, and for other great Railgun and Index content. Now, is Misaka one of the best characters in the franchise? Is she merely a cash cow that is misused just to get sales? Or is her character just plainly overrated? Whoa, don't cancel me just yet. These are intentionally hypothetical and open-ended questions to keep you watching, so don't hate on me just yet, as now we can look at the story of Index and see how Misaka's character evolves or perhaps devolves over time. Let's get started. Misaka Mikoto was first introduced in the very first volume of Index, intended by the author Kamachi Kazuma to be the guide or representation of the science side itself, to introduce the audience to the concept of Academy City, psychic abilities, and the ranking system of levels. Kamijo Toma being a level 0, and Mikoto being only one of 7 level 5s at the top of the Esper hierarchy. Thanks to the contrast to these two characters in the first opening scene of Index, we see the difference between how level 5s are perceived in Academy City compared to how level 0s are perceived. Due to Misaka's role in this arc, she doesn't really have much to do, but she's only in it for like 2 scenes in the light novel. And Kamachi wanted the focus of the first volume to be on Index and not Misaka. I think her debut scene is pretty good, as it was a fun way to introduce these concepts by adding some comedy to it by Toma trying to help Misaka, making an ass of himself in the process, while also revealing Misaka never needed help to begin with. Also establishing the dynamic between Misaka and Toma that was still fresh at its moment in time, but more on that later. If you watched my Kamachi video, you will have known that the first volume of Index was intended as a one-shot, so this short amount of screen time could have been all we saw of Misaka, which is kinda crazy to think about in retrospect. And even volume 2 had no Misaka at all. However, with the success of Index as a new light novel, came a mob of crazy fans obsessing over Misaka, prompting Kamachi to involve her more in the story than he originally intended, as the spin-off manga that Kamachi wanted to write for Index wasn't going to be focused on Misaka, as we know it became A Certain Scientific Railgun. He actually wanted it to be on Kuroko, but decided to change it to Misaka once he found out how popular Misaka was. But what made her so popular amongst the fans? Well, her popularity truly skyrocketed with the release of Volume 3 of Index, featuring the Sisters arc, which fleshed out Misaka as a character. Fans also really liked her personality, that she was a tsundere love interest, and yet she was capable of fighting and being a badass. her cool ability, the railgun of course, and people also liked her appearance. So pretty much they liked the overall package that Misaka came with. It was the sisters arc though that established Misaka as a flawed person, taking on the burden of derailing the entire sisters project herself, as she didn't want to involve others because she wanted to protect them, and also because of her ego as a level 5. She later realises it's okay to rely on others via her fight versus Toma, even if the odds seem impossible, as Toma is perceived as the weakest kind of Esper, and Misaka kinda looked down upon him, as Toma challenged her ego as level 5 since he could nullify her attacks with ease, proving that power and strength can be found in unlikely places. This is further exemplified when Toma fights Accelerator, with Toma putting his body on the line for Misaka and the sisters. Misaka repays Toma by organising the clones to help stop Accelerator's plasma attack that would have likely killed Toma. This shows Misaka has developed as a character from her interaction with Toma, as she is now relying on the sisters, who are seen by Accelerator to be useless compared to him. Accelerator relies on no one but himself, and his ego as a level 5 is ultimately his downfall. In contrast to Misaka, who changed to work together with the weakest people around her in order to overcome the odds. Misaka herself also gains the strength to directly challenge Accelerator, and is still willing to sacrifice herself to stop the project as a last resort, showing she is willing to put Toma and the sisters above herself in order to protect them, achieving a greater good via her sacrifice. Toma, however, defeats Accelerator, and this is where Misaka truly warms up to Toma, because he helped change her perspective in the darkest moment of her life so far. The Sisters arc is a classic part of the franchise, and is arguably the best we have seen of Misaka's character because of how well it is written. And it was even further fleshed out in Railgun, which I'll talk about in part 2, as I've already mentioned. Now, after this volume, Misaka's character becomes a lot more static in Index, pun intended, until like volume 16 that is. Misaka still appears in a lot of the arcs until 16, but she really doesn't do much and feels like she's just being included in the story for her tsundere gimmicks, or to have a brief moment of action and then disappearing. Now, it's not exactly uncommon for Index heroines to disappear or become more like background characters after the arc which is directly focused on them, but in comparison to Himigami, Kanzaki, Kazakiri, etc., Misaka appears way more frequent than them, so it's a lot more noticeable that Misaka is appearing a lot, but nothing is really happening, which is why I'll call Misaka out on this as opposed to the other characters I've mentioned. I'll talk about what exactly I mean by this by exploring some examples. So Misaka appears in Old Testament 5, where Etzali is introduced. She's basically used as a means for Etzali and Toma to fight. While I don't have an issue with this, there was no proper characterization for Misaka other than, I don't like this creepy guy, Toma, be my boyfriend please. And I know these scenes are used for comedy, and the interactions between Toma and Misaka are also admittedly entertaining, so again, I don't have a huge problem with it. I'm just exploring Misaka's role in this story as these volumes progress. She appears in volume 6, and is there a reason for it? Like, I don't remember Misaka ever really doing anything relevant in this arc, apart from arguing with Index about Toma, which ain't exactly contributing much. Misaka also appears in volume 8 and fights Owaki off screen. This volume was more focused on Kuriko and her relationship towards Misaka rather than the other way around. It definitely fleshes out Kuriko more as opposed to doing that with Misaka. Also, obligatory Misakura fanservice, because you all love Yori, you horny bastards. Next, she appears in a Daiheisei arc. Yet again, more tsundere antics. We do get more characterization with the introduction of Misaka's mum, Misuzu, but it feels kinda generic. Oh ho ho, you have a crush on the spiky-haired boy. No, I don't, Mom. I'm definitely not a tsundere, obviously. And again, I get that some people like these moments, and again, they are entertaining. But are you noticing a recurring theme? Again, Misaka appears for more slice-of-life interactions, and she appears again in the Academy City Invasion arc, which is more slice-of-life interactions, until the latter phase of that arc, where she has a little moment where she defeats some fodder soldiers and never shows up again. Like, to me, Misaka's character during these arcs feels stagnant. Like, she wasn't really contributing much to the plot, despite appearing lots, and it felt like the only reason why she was appearing was to perhaps appeal to the fans by just making her a generic tsundere, rather than continuing to give her meaningful character progression like in the Sisters arc. Okay, Misaka's abilities are still cool, and her character design is simple yet iconic and all, but is that really all that's left to her character at this stage in Index? Like, even her role from being the representative of the science side in Volume 1 faded into obscurity, since that wasn't really needed anymore, as the audience was now familiar with the world of Academy City. Combined with the fact that her role of being this interesting, multi-layered character from the Sisters arc had been replaced with generic tsundere who can also fight. I don't necessarily dislike Misaka's character during these volumes, I just think she could have been far better utilised considering the amount of time she got in these volumes. Luckily, Kamachi gave us a ray of hope for Misaka's character in Index, with her learning about Toma's memory loss during the God's Right Sea arc. Finally, we might have a chance to further flesh out and progress the relationship between Toma and Misaka, as conflict and confrontation between these characters regarding this revelation was inevitable. Misaka was thinking how much of Toma's relationship with her was fake, and when was this exact moment his memories were lost, and how would this affect Toma's role during the Sisters arc in Misaka's mind? Interesting questions. And we do get this confrontation during the Aqua of the Back arc, as Toma has escaped the hospital, with Toma still heavily injured from his encounter with Aqua. Misaka doesn't know what Toma is dealing with, but she has a feeling he has been fighting against crazy powerful opponents countless times without her knowing. Misaka sees a part of Toma in herself, as Toma isn't willing to get others involved in his fights, just like how Misaka acted in the Sisters arc, before she gave in and let Toma interfere. But she even calls Toma a hypocrite for not relying on others when he told her not to burden herself alone. Misaka also calls Toma out on his memories, and that he's been hiding the fact he's had amnesia from others. Toma, however, explains to Misaka it is basically his nature to act alone and fight crazy strong opponents. The fact that he puts himself in a dangerous enough situation that causes memory loss to protect Index alone proves that, and that the Toma of old is still guiding him to make these decisions from the heart, despite the fact that he has amnesia. Back in the Sisters arc, it wasn't Misaka's nature to sacrifice herself, or to try and solve problems on her own in an isolated incident. In contrast to Toma, whose very nature has become to self-sacrifice himself for the interest of others due to the new identity he has over the course of many incidents, even if his enemy completely outmatches him, like with Aqua. Misaka debates internally about helping him, but ultimately realizes it is his nature and it is wrong to forcefully stop him, as that's what she tried to do on the bridge in the Sisters arc, and ultimately regrets it. While this scene is kinda short, It's honestly really well written, and the dynamic between these characters is given a huge revival in quality compared to those past volumes I mentioned. While Misaka has a seemingly small role in this volume, it does so much for her and Toma's character, as we start to understand them more. And yes, the light novel version of this scene is by far the best, as Toma and Misaka's inner thought process is way better explored and articulated in the light novel than in the anime and manga. Furthermore, Aqua is defeated by teamwork involving Toma, proving that Toma was probably wrong to tell Misaka to leave him alone, but due to Toma's stubbornness and instinct to follow his nature no matter what, Toma would have gone ahead alone even if Kanzaki and the Amakusa were defeated by Aqua. Misaka also realizes she is in love with Toma during this arc, and she is prepared to put her own interests aside to let Toma be himself. Okay, you'd think that by loving someone you would want them to get hurt, but Misaka definitely struggles making this decision, and the reason she decides not to act is because she believes she would ultimately be selfish by going ahead with what she wants, so she makes a difficult decision and sacrifice. Luckily, this plotline does continue to some extent, but I do have some issues with what's ahead in the story. So, in World War III, Misaka happens to spot Toma on TV in Russia, and then decides to go over there to see what's going on. Wait a sec, Misaka, didn't you basically say, okay, I love Toma, so I'm gonna let him do crazy shit, and not let my personal interest get in the way? Well, let's just do a 180 on that. Okay, I get it, that it would be quite a shock to see Toma in the middle of a war zone and in a different country, but is this really the deal breaker? Perhaps that's a little bit nitpicky from me, but my main problem with Misaka in World War III is that she didn't really need to be in it. I feel like this plot thread between Misaka and Toma could have continued in a different arc, as it almost feels like Misaka is being forced into World War III, quite literally from what we see her going to Russia because of what she saw on TV. Like, that's a strange coincidence. She even does a side quest of attacking a Russian military base which was going to use a nuke. To be honest, you could have cut this scene out from the arc and not much would change. And to my absolute shock, that's what JC Staff did in the anime, but I suppose it was to compensate for the fact that they already added a shit ton of Misaka filler scenes prior, and that there were far more important plot threads in World War III that needed more attention. Fast forward to near the end of the arc, Fuyama has been defeated, and the Star of Bethlehem is about to crash into the Arctic Sea. Misaka hijacks an aircraft with the help of her sister, and tries to save Toma, who is still on the Star. Toma is like, nah, I still got shit to do because Gabriel's about to explode, and I need to stop that shit. So Misaka flies away, and Toma does his thing. The end. Okay, I get the point of this scene. Toma is willing to sacrifice himself, like how Misaka was going to do in the Sisters arc, but Toma, being Toma, goes ahead with it anyway. But is it really needed, and does it actually improve the dynamic of Misaka and Toma? I personally don't see it. To be honest, the purpose of this scene was basically to trick the audience into thinking, oh shit, Toma might die, and this might be the last time Misaka sees him, as Toma's fate at the end of this arc was left ambiguous in the light novel, unlike the anime where we see he survived. So yeah, nothing necessarily badly written, just wasteful and kinda pointless in my opinion. Like, Misaka was dragged to Russia to do one side quest that could be cut out and then just get told to fuck off by Toma. And this is meant to be in the final and most important arc of Index thus far, and that's her impact in the final arc as one of the main heroines. might have not have included her, to be honest. Like, sure, you can criticize Index, the character, for making appearances for the sake of gags, but at least even she had a climax to her character arc from the very first volume of in World War III, with her forgiving Toma for lying to her about the amnesia. With Misaka, we don't really even get a conclusion to her character arc. So now is the time to talk about New Testament. Basically all the content in Index past Season 3. So click off this video now if you want to avoid spoilers. You've been warned. Misaka in early New Testament falls into the same stagnation from between Old Testament 3 and Old Testament 16, with her not really providing much to the plot despite making regular appearances. Again with more comedic moments, like her encounter with drunk Toma. Again, that moment was kinda funny, but Misaka really fell into purgatory in early New Testament. Okay, she had a cool moment with Accelerator in New Testament 3, meeting him for the first time since the Sisters arc, and roasting each other for what happened while also working together. But this moment lasts for a mere split second, which is a shame, cause I would have liked to have seen them interact way more. Misaka also fights Brunhild in New Testament 6, but again, this fight was just, hey, this is a volume full of fights, so let's add another one. For a fight which is supposed to be a level 5 versus a saint, it's kind of forgettable, and ends abruptly in a stalemate. Misaka also helps out Toma against Freya when he asks for help for the first time, which is a nice nod to their encounter in Old Testament 16, and shows Toma is developing as a character. Again, Misaka gets a sudden resurgence of life to her character in New Testament 10 during the Ophinus arc, where she fights Toma because she wants answers for him teaming up with Ophinus. Toma explains to Misaka some of what happened in New Testament 9, including how he destroyed the happiness of the entire world to follow his own desires and needs to pay for his sins by saving Ophinus. Misaka rejects that the Omega world was the superior one, as personally, she feels like she wouldn't be able to face her own sins if the sisters were saved, and that there is no such thing as a perfect world, as it will always be twisted underneath. It's a nice change to Index's formula, as usually it would be Toma giving the ideological speech to his opponent, but it's the other way around this time, as Misaka beats the stunned Toma and destroys his illusion. Ironic. This shows how much influence Toma has had on Misaka as a character. She's basically matured thanks to Toma, and now has gained aspects of Toma's personality, which is now helping Toma in the present, who is now figuring out his way in the world after the traumatic experiences he faced, and how he is basically the enemy of the entire world at this stage, and Misaka is basically using her knowledge and the progression she has had to her advantage to help Toma and make him realise that he shouldn't feel guilty about this. Toma doesn't have to feel the weight of destroying the perfect world, or the fate of 6 billion people, and can solely focus on saving Ophinus rather than living in self-doubt with his actions. This directly follows on from Toma's character development of being more selfish, which is a great follow-on from all the iconic Toma and Misaka moments I've talked about so far that has improved the two characters. Combined with a spin on the formula we have seen so far, this scene was truly poetic by Kamachi, as Misaka, using her own character development, develops Toma in response, as it was normally the other way around, because if you remember from the Sisters arc, Toma helped develop Misaka's character, but now the roles have pretty much been reversed in every aspect. And this moment was just great for me. Like, I really enjoyed this moment. And again, we don't get much Misaka from this volume, but when we do, she stands out, so I'll give her credit. Misaka gets even more screen time during the latter half of New Testament, and this is where things get interesting in regards to Misaka as a character. Some ups and some lows. But one recurring theme is Misaka's ignorance of magic. Like, no matter how many times she's been exposed to it, and has even had it somewhat explained to her by other characters, she keeps acting dense about what it is for no reason. Misaka is supposed to be a genius, so that is why it's kinda annoying that she still thinks magic is some weird Esper power after all this time. You could say Misaka's role in the Orphaness arc was foreshadowing what was to come as she becomes increasingly eager to be involved with Toma's issues and figure out what the fuck has been happening to him lately. Misaka tags along with Toma to help him escape from High Priest, as Misaka realizes she is completely outmatched by the magic god. This follows on to New Testament 15, where Misaka is humiliated by Salome in a fight, which then causes Misaka to snap in a completely unexpected way. This comes in the form of character development, where Misaka turns a bit psychotic. She realizes she needs more power to be able to compete with the magicians she has encountered, as she becomes increasingly obsessed with entering Toma's world. It makes sense she would want to be more involved with Toma's affairs than before, as Toma literally stood against the entire world and allied himself with the most wanted person alive. But it was so surprising that Misaka was turning power hungry as a result. It's like all the crazy situations revolving around Toma, Academy City, and herself feeling incompetent and out of her depth as level 5, that it caused her to become more power hungry. Hell, it was even reminiscent of when Accelerator was power hungry in the Sisters arc, making Misaka's development a role reversal again in a way. So it's kind of funny how we got a role reversal in New Testament 10 with Toma and Misaka, and now we get a role reversal with Accelerator and Misaka. I personally love this shift to her character, as Misaka had felt the same for a long time. And it was also the fact that this development was definitely a shock to most readers. Misaka then obtained the AAA, or anti-art attachment, blasted Yuitsu, and the volume ended with me feeling really hyped and curious about where Misaka's character would go after this. It certainly made me the most excited about Misaka's character in Index ever, as prior, she wasn't really the focus of the main plot in Index, but now she could play a larger role with a change in her character that would keep her fresh and not repetitive. I remember following the novels around this time the volume was released, and surprisingly, this change was controversial among a lot of the Misaka fans I saw on social media, complaining that Misaka isn't cute anymore, and hating the new character development because of that. And now you know why I joke about Misaka on Twitter sometimes. I don't know if the Japanese fandom were also like this, but I find it weird how immediately after this volume, Misaka just acts like herself again. It's like Kamachi discarded this development, or was maybe influenced by the opinion of some fans. And I think it's a real shame, as Misaka's character development had so much potential, combined with the fact that Misaka becomes even more pointless after this arc. She's basically partnered with Shokuho all the time, and they don't really contribute anything important to the plot, and yet keep reappearing again and again and again. Misaka even follows Toma into another country again, this time in England, and yet you could cut Misaka and Shokuho out of the Koranzan arc, and nothing would change. I feel like Kamachi was sorta looking for an excuse just to have the two of them where Toma was for the final volume. I can justify it for Shokuho, as she was exceptional during New Testament 22R, as it concluded the character arc that she had had nicely from New Testament 11, and you can watch my video about that for more information. But Misaka? Well, she tries to protect Toma, I guess, and then is mind controlled for the rest of the volume. That's it. Seriously? That's more disappointing than her role during World War III. I don't know what was the point of having her in all these New Testament volumes just to have her character regress and do nothing by the end. Luckily, Genesis Testament is showing signs that Kamachi wants to bring Misaka's development from New Testament 15 back, so I won't hold my breath until I see it. So fingers crossed Genesis Testament actually makes Misaka a character that will actually contribute something in regards to her screen time, which obviously won't diminish. Overall, I feel indifferent about Misaka's character in Index. Considering how long Index has been going on, and how many appearances she has made, Misaka only has a handful of moments in Index where she really stands out, and in the rest it's just bland, which is a shame. Okay, I get it. She's not a main character in Index. She is in Railgun because she's the main protagonist. But she is definitely one of the main heroines in Index, and you can't deny that. And she appears way more than other heroines in the series, such as Itsuwa and Kanzaki. And yet, I'd argue that Kanzaki and Itsuwa are better utilized overall in Index specifically than Misaka, as although they don't appear much at all, their limited screen time feels like it's being more efficiently used in terms of justifying why they are present in the arcs that they appear in. In contrast to Misaka as of late in New Testament, where she feels kinda out of place without a clear sense of direction for her character at times. I feel like it's a huge shame considering how promising her character was in the Orphanus arc and New Testament 15. But I still have some hope Kamachi does have a plan for her, and isn't simply just throwing her into arcs for the sake of it. I do feel like parts of Genesis Testament 2 and the revelation of Genesis Testament 4 has showed some degree of potential again. I'm not going into specifics because that'll be spoilers for Genesis Testament, and I'd rather just do the entirety of Genesis Testament for this character when it does get released, but that won't be for a long time. Also, I want to note that I do like Misaka as a character despite what you might think from this video. I just think that she is a lot stronger as a character overall in Railgun, where she is more suitable as the main protagonist in a spin-off, and obviously I'll talk about that in part 2. So don't think I'm hating on the character because of this video. I know some people online get really triggered over criticizing waifus. Literally, I've been blocked by at least 3 or 4 users on Twitter for just having a civilized discussion about Index or Misaka or making jokes about the character. I just want Misaka to progress and have an impactful role in Index if she's gonna appear. I want the best for her character. She's not just a love interest who's meant to blush and be a tsundere, in my opinion. That's boring. I want Kamachi to take risks with the character and see meaningful progression as one of the main heroines. Is that too much to ask? Also, I'd like to keep the comments as civil as possible, whether you agree or disagree with me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and where do you see Misaka heading overall in the story of Index. Remember, part 2 will be looking at Misaka in Railgun, so stay tuned to the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Thank you, and bye bye.